All right, and thank you so much for joining us today. We are here with Troy Naquin with Quad Standard Labs. Thanks for letting us hang out with you today in your new headquarters. This is awesome.
Yeah, man, thanks for coming. Couldn't have aligned better with the perfect timing. We just moved in, so yeah, happy to have you here.
Absolutely, thanks for having us. And so let's start off, man. How's business? How's business been?
Business is good. Business, depending on what side we're talking about, but the cinematic FPV side is definitely something that's starting to see a major uptick within, I think, the deeper creatives within production teams. So with everything going on in the world and people having time on their hands, they're really starting to see the advantages and the different perspectives that first-person view can provide.
For sure. Absolutely, man. So let's get into just a little bit about your background and how you came to start Quad Standard Labs.
Yeah, it was a journey. I was a chef and a restaurant manager for 20 years. I was a lifer within the industry. Loved the day-to-day, flow of the restaurant and all of that. I learned some really core business fundamentals from finding my way, from working my way up through different stages. So when I got out of school, I decided to see every aspect of the industry. And one of the big parts of that was, while everybody wanted to go off to fancy different places and travel the world, I wanted to literally just go down and get into like the most heavy production we could of food. And so I went to a place called the Oasis where we were doing $250,000 weekends and just an insane amount of food being pushed out, and basically became part of the wheel and got in there in the machine, and we did a lot of food. And from there, I worked my way up through stages, through different areas and different restaurants and different avenues of food production, to where I ended up at a place that was owned by the creator of Carrabba's, so actually a well-known, world-renowned chef, actually based out of Houston. A lot of alignment there, just being from Houston. So started working for him and found that hands-on approach, day-to-day operations, though the company had grown and had gotten really big, he was still fundamentally involved in very specific ways to keep the brand on brand. And so didn't really realize it, but that was my first kind of foray into brand management and understanding the totality of business operations and how departments and things and it all has to come together and make sense. So a lot of people go to school for that, but that's how I learned it, was honestly just working my way up. So after almost 20 years in the industry, I decided drones had kind of popped up on the scene and were something that I was really interested in and started dabbling in, but I wanted to figure out how to become part of that next generation of developer. As seeing the computer scene in the 90s go from buy a computer on Friday to obsolete on Monday, I knew drones were going to have a very similar hype cycle and development cycle where it's going to take off, it's going to be really big, then people are going to get into it, people are going to do stuff, and then it's going to adapt and change and evolve, and then guess what? More people, and as things become more accessible and price comes down and value and all that, that it would become, there was room for developing. And applying the technology, which it was technology. I mean, it was a different approach. And so just seeing the drone stuff, man, started buying, using, and filming on YouTube what I did, sharing it, looking for opportunities, but didn't really know what I was looking for. Sure. Lots of reviews, lots of, hey, can I do this? And asking and telling people I was gonna, the next upcoming YouTuber and they should sponsor me. And yeah, that didn't work. I mean, it worked to a degree. I mean, I was producing, I was doing some really cool stuff, but more again, I then started recognizing what I was doing wrong when I started applying what I knew from the real world business side. So started really thinking about it more of how can I really become part of the industry. And so at that point, I knew I needed to really start focusing on an area that I appreciated and enjoyed. And so that's where FPV, after dabbling in the bigger stuff, FPV, I quickly recognized as this was going to continue the DIY experience that consumerized products like DJI products were going to kind of move away from. So all the early DJI products that were build yourself now became it's built, it's ready, it goes, and it's now a smart drone. I knew that dumb drones to a degree were still going to be really applicable in different avenues, and that whether it be over in cinematic use or whether it be in law enforcement use, that there's always a reason to have total control of the drone. And so knowing that, I just set off on this like experience of just like FPV and do everything I can and learn everything about first person view and how to fly manually flown drones and build them. And that just led me down a crazy like rabbit hole of YouTube creation, meeting people, asking people what they did, going to shows, going to events, and going do those things with the intent of not, hey, look at me, look what I do, but like, tell me what you do, show me what you're doing, what do you want to do, and finding how to connect dots. And so I think the biggest answer, the easiest way to answer the question of how did I get here is I connected all the dots. From what I was able and capable of doing in my own experience and my own skill sets, to recognizing the individuals around me that provided me the things that I didn't, but then I could pull together into something bigger. And so Quad Standard Labs is really just that. It's kind of an evolution of all the different places I've been within the industry, which I've worked for 5 years at 4 different companies, and all of the different people brought together under one roof where we produce first-person view drones for professional use, whether it be cinematic, real estate, or all the in-between. So again, where smart drones kind of leave off, we kind of pick up and throw an FPV camera on it, and we're able to do.
Very cool. That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about the technology in itself and what you guys build, like the specific platforms that you currently are building, and how those are applicable to specifically, cinematic use, and then other uses that kind of trail off of that.
Yeah, so the forward-facing part of the company, like I said, is the cinematic FPV or first-person view side. So within that segment, there's everything from micro-sized stuff that's shooting with decased, or what people call naked GoPro heroes. So micro drones with GoPros on them. Then we go up a step to kind of a smaller, but still a little bit less than your typical race drone, kind of in a 3-inch category, which would be considered a micro still, but it's a cinewhoop, so to speak, where you can put a full hero on it. A few other cameras, Sony RXOs and Insta, 1Rs. And then we go from there and we start getting into bigger stuff. So those are the things that we can really be around things and people and different, soft targets, so to speak. And we can really film some really interesting, small, single shot stuff. When we get into the larger, kind of faster, more powerful stuff, we start getting into 5-inch quads like the hydrophobe, which is basically taking a 5-inch drone and it's waterproofing it or making it water resistant or element proof, and allows you to basically not worry about anything other than just getting the shot. And that's another product that was developed by Gab 707 and Andy Shin. And so the goal was to go collect whale snot, and then that kind of transformed into, like, if we're gonna go do this and it works, why not just fly this drone all the time? So guys that are shooting, especially in winter weather and stuff like that, they love the hydrophobe and the stuff that really buttons everything up and keeps it together. So they unify with, that across their 5-inch spectrum. And then we do some bigger stuff. We do custom, anything anybody really wants built, we can do. But when we get into more of the kind of more hot items these days, which are the cinelifters, this is kind of where the new DIY experiences are really pushing forward. Is we've been flying GoPro cameras for countless years, 5-10 years now. Really, ever since we've been flying drones, we've been flying GoPro cameras. What we haven't been able to fly without stabilization is larger full frame cameras, like a lot of the ones you guys got here. These cameras require extremely smooth flight and stability on the platform at which it's sitting. And if that's a drone and not a stabilization or a gimbal like most people use on traditional drones, then you get all that micro vibration. Any small vibration you get through there. So what's really happened is, the last year and a half within the DIY FPV first person view space, the software and the hardware has really come together in a way that's produced a really tunable aircraft, to where when it's tuned properly and it's designed properly and it's loaded properly, which is all typical aerodynamics and typical aircraft science, so to speak, then we would be able to fly much smoother and no longer need the mechanical stabilization of the gimbal. And so, the part that people don't recognize in that is, well, if you're still just getting smooth video, what's the difference? Why can't I do the other? The problem is with the traditional drone shot, we've seen it. And honestly, it's super saturated. It's oversaturated, and it's almost like a roll your eyes at the TV kind of thing these days, because I'm sure it's like when people used to look at colorized TV, like, oh, this again, like we're doing colorization, like, come on, man. Can't you just shoot it in color?
Right.
So now what we're able to do is, instead of those slow pullbacks, those, orbit shots, those pan and tilts that, coming into something and then looking straight down and you're like, oh, that's really not cool. Now what we can do is we can come in over the top and we can dive down and we can go towards the target or the shot, so to speak. So these shots that were really only achievable by trickery and multi-shooting and clipping things together, or even CGI in a lot of situations, we can now do by just taking a camera, strapping it to a drone that's tuned right, built right, and the pilot knows how to fly it. Well, they can go and get these just incredibly textured and just really like flowing shots that, to me, is really, again, like, if the original question, how did we get here, it all goes back to that, is that single flowing shot, single take, where I'm not a videographer and I'm not a shooter, but I love the idea of just one take. Like, I don't know what it is within me, but it's like, yeah, like if you can just do like one seamless thing, it just looks really cool. It's just really cool. Yeah. So, if me as a layman thinks that, can you imagine what a guy like, Michael Bay or Steven Spielberg sees when he's like, wait, we can do what?
Right.
So that's what drives us, and that's really where we're at now, is pushing on putting, cinematic FPV platforms, whether they're the small ones being used in marketing videos and all kinds of other great, there's great content that can be shot on some smaller cameras, all the way up to the full frame cameras, where, that's again where money's no object. Like, destroy however many drones you got to get the shot. I don't care, but we're going to get this shot. And that's really fun and cool to think about. And so I think that's where the future of QSL lands, is really with, again, pushing the boundaries of what we can do with, strapping whatever camera you want on whatever platform you want.
Absolutely. And yeah, that's the kind of the magic behind FPV, is being able to get those dynamic shots that you weren't able to get before. You know what I mean? And just really putting yourself in the pilot seat of the drone. And, that's basically the idea, is like you're flying and you're getting these perspectives and bending space in a way that you aren't able to get with a GPS stabilized type of platform. So yeah, that's really exciting. It's really cool. So
back in 1995, there was a video game called Game Day, and it was loosely based on football, but it was basically football. It was not sanctioned by the NFL, I don't believe, but it was basically a cross between Blitz and Madden. And what it was you could, after the play, you could like rough the passer. You could basically, like in Rain Gretzky hockey, you could get in fights, and then you'd be like A, B, A, B, A, B, until somebody gets knocked out. Sure. And then somebody got a penalty for getting in a fight. And whoever lost got the penalty, And so, stupid, silly game that we used to play, me and my friends in high school. And the crazy thing about it was, I didn't know at the time, but they had a replay camera. And the replay camera was, if I remember, was actuated by the Z button within 3 seconds of the play being over. And if you press that button, it instantly just snapped back from where it was, just like a foot or two, and you were now in free roam. And again, at the time, I didn't equate it, but I was flying FPV, and basically, as soon as those shots were over, we would click the button, and my friends would hate me. It was, Troy, come on, man, let's go, next play. And I'm like, no, hold on, I want to see that. And like, I'd pull back and I'd yaw, like I didn't know, but I'd yaw spin around the player as I'm like rolling it in slow motion back with the left controller. So like, I'm controlling it just like a drone, and I'm using buttons to basically move the video. But that's what I enjoyed doing, was like after the play, like going up to the top of the dome and then coming back down as it's like moving, and then like spinning around the guy as he gets hit. Like, and now today we're building drones that are shooting that. Yeah, no, the people are shooting that today. I think I saw somebody just a few weeks ago shooting some football stuff where they did very similar, where football game, they dove down as the ball was snapped, and then they went behind the quarterback, yawed around him, and then he threw the ball and they chased the ball. Like,
too crazy.
Exactly what I was doing in 1995, but I was doing it on a PlayStation 2 and like, whatever it was, like it was just nuts. So that's I think, whatever is within me, it was always there. Yeah. I don't know what it is.
For sure, man. So. For sure, that's exciting, man. And just kind of being able to reminisce and think about those things that in some way or another led you to this moment, and it gives you a different perspective of it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think things just align.
Yeah.
You know, connecting the dots and things that align. You can't connect the dots if they're not in alignment.
Correct.
And you know, once they're lined up, I mean, yeah, it just, I think that's something that a lot of people miss, is just paying attention to the details. You know, of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk a little bit about the cool projects that you're working on, the cool people that you're working with to do some of the things that you guys are doing here at Quad Standard Labs.
Yeah, so Quad Standard Labs, I mean, any day we could bring on any new project, right? So again, the forward-facing side is we're building drones. So we're always going to be building FPV stuff, products that we're selling on our website. So all the drones we mentioned, Sicario, which is kind of our top-of-the-line product right now. It's a collaborative product with Andy and Gab, where you know we took everything of the cinelifters that we've learned, and they've rolled that into a new product, kind of a design, in order to keep that really proprietary, in the sense, not that, hey, only I want to make money off of it. And yes, we are sharing and there's money to be shared, but really to unify the brand, right? And to make sure that the Sicario product, when it arrives on a set or it's out to do work, that product is up to the standard, right? And so the standard being what we do here at Quad Standard Labs. So built with the products we do, tuned with our tuning, supported by us, and shipped out by us, and maintained by us. So if we can control all of that, then we know the product that gets to set is going to be getting the right shots. What we aren't going to have is people, you know, hey, I got this and I got a gig and I need help. You built something, you got a gig, and you can figure that out.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't like being that guy, but, you know, we do have to be that way in certain ways. So in order to get around that, and in some ways just say, look, here's the baseline. Like, if you want an awesome product that's built right, gonna perform right, here it is, all in one from us. And so we're really working on the biggest project right now is getting Sicario brought up to production standards. So we're having them built off-site at another production facility. We will be probably bringing those back on-site pretty soon. But in the meantime, what we're doing is we're really trying to get the final revisions and all the final kinks worked out to where we can start wholesaling them. So we've had a few different people reach out to us, whether they be domestic or even actually in Europe. And what they're wanting is to basically wholesale pretty much the whole product line. But Sicario being one of those things that they want to be able to offer out for rentals. They want to be able to offer them out just for straight purchase. And they also want to be able to configure them slightly different for things like different laws and regulations, for instance, in Europe. So we're working with Studio Sport, particularly out of France, and we're going to be pushing them units of thick and Sicario to begin with. So they'll be actually getting those units in a few weeks. They'll be making them compliant, and then we'll be able to transfer that compliancy over to all of the units that we sell. So we will then be able to wholesale these units, let's say, to a company in Canada, and have them compliant and ready to go. And so now, again, we know it's less about the per dollar per unit. We're not trying to, it's not about the dollars. It's about the application and the accessibility. So, working with companies like Hover Global here in the United States that focused very heavily on everything cinematic, whether it's car rigging or boat rigging, all the way up to drones. A company like that would really be able to embed and get these products onto sets. So that's really at the forefront of the Quad Standard Labs product development chain, is just unifying all of our products into basically standardized and able to be wholesaled out, so we can get these all across the globe and really accessible. On the backside of what we do and the stuff that people don't see, I have quite a few irons in the fire. In fact, Quad Standard Labs' original success, the first 8 months that we were doing business, I was building 2 to 3 drones maybe a month, maybe 4 a month. We're now building 3 to 5 a week minimum. And so originally, when I was only building a few, I was actually making money by finding other products and projects to manage. So stuff that's not FPV related. So anything adjacent to the technology, remote application, software application for any drones, hardware development, whether it be I want to develop a from the ground up drone. So we had a client last year that They're a software company, and they had a ground control system that was secure and was vetted by the government and known to be 100% viable to be used on anything that they wanted to transmit data on and have chain of command. So they decided to spin that up into, let's build our own drone and let's build a US-based drone. So last year, we spent most of the year helping develop the airframe with some engineers that we contracted, building those out, testing them, and kind of flying around the country and shopping those for production. So in that process is actually kind of how we get to where we are now with Sicario. Is we did all that work for our client, and we were being paid to do that. And while we were doing that, we were forward thinking, well, all of these same manufacturers are manufacturers that we could use if we ever had our own products. So that was a really big unification of kind of our total holistic approach to different revenue streams within the market. They're all related. They're all drone adjacent, so to speak. Now that software company, funny enough, I had another client reached out to me and said, we need software developed. And they wanted to use Parrot Anafis, and they wanted to develop Parrot Anafi software to basically map properties and take some data and input that data into a specific exportable document. And to do that, we actually contacted and got in touch with our other client and said, hey, can you do this? Funny story, they do a lot of drone code because we knew that, but more funny story was we had actually introduced the software client to Parrot directly. So we were at a show at AUVSI last year where I actually just ran up on a table of people talking about the Anafi thermal. So I see a table and a guy's got an Anafi thermal in his hand and he's talking to two people about it. Just kind of hang out at the table and watch. I'm like, yeah, and it was like a mixer party. They give you free tickets to drinks and stuff. And so we're just hanging out. It was the PX Ford booth. Nice. And next thing I know, the lookover was like, hey, what do you do? And I was like, oh, hey, my name's Troy, blah, blah, blah. I got a couple of questions about that. So I have a client and they're looking to use parrots for something. And I'm really curious, like blah, blah, blah. Come to find out, I'm speaking to like basically the #2 guy at Parrot.
Nice.
He invented all of the Edu products.
Wow.
And my client that wants to use software or wants to use Parrot Anafis also has a drone STEM camp that they use Parrot Edu products.
Nice.
So this conversation very quickly spun up into, can I get your information so we could talk about this?
Absolutely.
And within 2 weeks, I had connected them to our software team. And basically we had Parrot on board and allowing us to use the Parrot Anafi branding and all the stuff that we wanted. We had a deal signed to do software development, and we had hooked our client up with Parrot, who to this day has done quite a bit of work with them. So just another perfect example of, the things we do and what goes on. It just depends on a daily basis on who calls, who emails, or what dots and what things align.
For sure.
But yeah, I mean, we have our hand in just about anything that's development-wise or application-wise.
Very cool. Very cool. Man, let's, I like to look at the industry kind of with a broader view because I was able to, and fortunate enough to get into it myself on the early side of things. And just seeing the democratization of drones has been crazy. And so looking at what you're doing, it feels like you're on the side of democratizing the FPV process because there's only really technically, as far as I know, 2 ways to get a drone: either build it yourself or, get it from someone who has already built it, the bind and fly type deals. So just seeing what you guys are doing is important in that aspect, just because it opens up the doors to so many different people to be able to use the drones that you guys build in so many different applications, and just getting started, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's funny. That's actually, it is. It's the basis of how we do business with our clients, and the standard part of the branding, funny enough, was not even intended. QSL, and then that evolved into Quad Standard Labs, began with a brief, it was thought of in like 8 minutes. I still have the messaging. So I have a local friend that's a brand expert, and he does basically a ton of political stuff. He's just chock full daily, of all kinds of stuff. But he's a brand expert and a brand manager, and anytime I have those types of questions, when I thought I'm going to start a company, I just messaged him one night. I was like, hey, what do you think of Quad Factory with it? KWAD. He was like, man, that's stupid. First of all, it's not a word. Second of all, stop. And I was like, what? So he's like, no, think simple, think three words, 3 letters, think of ing, think of, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay. I was like, I don't know. So how about QSL? And I was like, how about Quad Standard Labs? And he's like, I like it. Yeah. Something like that. That's solid. I go and search the domain. It's available. I bought it and I messaged him like 30 seconds later. I was like, cool, done. And he's like, well, I mean, I didn't mean that. And I was like, nope, done. Yeah. And I stood on that. He actually told me that I should probably rethink. I was like, no, I'm good. And so 2 days later, another friend of mine who I was working with on another product that we were already kind of spinning work up, he also does brand, like logo designs and brand designs. So he kicks me over the QSL logo and the branding, like a full branding catalog. And I was like, done. Cool. Like he picked the colors, like it all just came together. Nice. So even crazier is 3 weeks after that, I'm talking to Tony Cake from Immersion RC, and we're having a conversation about, he is building like really super long range, Lion powered stuff. And I guess he had seen something I posted and he reached out to me about something, and we just started talking, and I was like, man, I'd love to learn more about these. Like that's kind of what I'd like to do, is like have the in on like what it is exactly you're testing and how you're figuring out like all that data. Right. So he's like, well, let's get on a call. So I got on a call with him and we're talking, and he's like, so you're not standardizing your product? And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you're not like basically saying like, because he says, I always thought somebody should do this. Bring in a bunch of different racers or something and say, we're going to build your frame, but we're going to build it with these components, and just build them that way. And that's not what I wanted to do, but he hit the nail on the head. Sure. As far as, and the funny thing is I'm like, Tony, you don't know racers well enough. They're never going to go for that. But what it clicked was, wait a second. At the time, I was building 3 or 4 different drones with 3 or 4 different combinations of parts. And I was like, why am I doing this? Why don't I just see what I can find? So I started like looking at all the hardware, and I went, okay, this is what I want. Okay, these are what I want. If I just use all these things and nothing else, I can build these 5 different drones 5 different ways, but they all have the same hardware. Sure. So really the standard part started kind of coming from me deciding or recognizing that, hey, the only smart way to do this is to bring everything together, and in that way, when one drone breaks down, they all work the same. Either we can pull parts from them, or we just know why it's not working. Sure. Just from being able to know from working on the same things over and over. So it's really been great for the clients in understanding that they can buy a hydrophobe, a geyser, and a squirt, and they're all the same, different motors, different frames. But aside from that, if literally, like if one got trashed and they had to have it rebuilt, they could rebuild it with another one. And again, when problems happen, they know how to fix. They don't have to learn 3 different drones. They learn one drone, and it's kind of all of them. Another funny thing is we just had a conversation with Hover Global. And Hover Global is wanting to, again, bring these products in and wholesale them directly and rent them directly as fleets. And one of the reasons they want to do that is exactly what you said, is they want every studio they work with to have the same drone. They don't want 5 different builds out there of a Sicario, for instance, or a thick. They want 5 of our thicks, and they'll rent them out, or they'll sell them to other studios. That way, when they work with those studios, they know the hardware. So yeah, I mean, it kind of fell together or came together that way, but I guess it kind of always was the plan. But it did. It just happened to really come out that way, and now it's what we stand by. It's the standard. What we do is the standard.
Awesome, man. That's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about just your thoughts on the future of drones, right? Yeah. So we're at I still consider it the beginning, right? Yeah. Of this whole drone revolution, getting drones in the hands of consumers and professionals, media professionals, fire and rescue, that whole sector as well. So what is your thought, or if you had to hypothesize about what's going to happen in this next step in the future of drones, especially with regulation coming on board? Yeah. Specifically how it has to do with how it will affect your drones that you have, because your drones aren't
Smart.
they're not smart drones, right? So there's a little bit of a thing there. Have you gone through those dynamics and thought through like how is this going to affect my business? How will it affect the industry? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so absolutely. I have been a proponent of regulation since the beginning.
Yeah.
I think anyone, honestly, that's fighting regulation as a business owner in the space is either misinformed or they just, I don't think they understand like what's at stake.
For sure.
The idea that we can't progress. We can't apply the technology in so many ways. One great example is we don't use agricultural drones in the United States. There's not a single agricultural drone that I know of flying in the United States, by a company that's like, hey, we have fleets of drones maintaining our fields.
Sure.
But if you go to Europe, guess what? Lots of them. You go to South America, you go to all over the planet.
Yeah.
They're performing amazing things at a fraction of the cost and producing better product within the fields and outdoors, in these spaces because of the drone technologies. The reason we don't use them in the United States is because we don't have the proper regulations yet. We aren't ready for that. And yes, the reason why some of these foreign countries are able to do these things much easier are because they have a lot less that they have to worry about. Regulation here, in the United States where it's, so many things going on. We have cars and automated cars and airs, and we just have all kinds of stuff that other countries may not have. So in order for our businesses to start applying these things in real ways that are really effective, deploying them downtown to accidents to bring blood on the scene, a specific type of blood, you can't do that right now. There's companies here in Texas that are developing that type of infrastructure and those types of drones. They can't deploy them and they can't really test them really very much yet in real use cases, again, because of regulation. So regulation's coming.
Yep.
Where do I think that puts us? Oddly enough, I actually did apply to be on the drone advisory committee. I did apply to be on the drone advisory committee. And the drone advisory committee is headed up by Department of Transportation, FAA, and they are the ones that are basically studying all of the different use cases and all of the different ways that these technologies are going to be applied and developing the proposals for regulation. This is where the remote ID and technology and stuff like that is being discussed. So QSL, Quad Standard Labs, I would love to be on that board. I'd love to be part of helping understand how cinematic FPV and professional use likely won't be regulated any more than it currently is.
Sure.
And I don't really need to do anything about that, but I do want to be part of that conversation to ensure, that hey, if whatever the regulation is, there just needs to be permitting. As long as they can go fly the machines, I don't care.
Right.
So I don't think they're going to take work away from people. They're not going to say you can't ever do this. It's going to be to do this, you've got to do this.
Absolutely.
Professionals have no problem getting certificates, going to classes, jumping through hoops. That's what they do.
Absolutely.
Hobbyists, this is again where people have a misunderstanding, a misconception. And, as someone who, I'm vice president of a local AMA chapter, I ran the multi-GP charter for a couple of years here. I love hobbyists. Mm-hmm. They tend to have a knee-jerk reaction when it comes to regulation. And again, I'm not quite sure why, if at the end of the day we can carve out the right spaces. Sure. Very often hobbyists like to refer to themselves like skateboarders, which I also find, okay, great. It's a great example. Now, can we talk about that? No, they don't want to hear about it. At the end of the day, skateboarding, very similar. Outruled in cities because they were destroying stuff, grinding handrails, leaving trash, making a mess, putting wax all down the curbs and stuff. If it's my storefront, I don't want that.
Sure.
It's understandable.
Yep.
What's interesting is people forget how much money got poured into skate parks and different types of programs and things that Vans, started an entire brand all across the country and provided skate parks for kids. And, this was all stuff done, tax write-offs and things like that were to make up for outlawing things in certain areas. So sure, our hobby is going to have to find an AMA field, and hopefully those AMA fields are holding their, are actually being ran properly, which that's a huge thing. I mean, I can tell you as AMA vice president for going on 5 years, I've never talked to my local representative, never seen them. I've never got an email asking me to do this or asking this. We run the club the way that we're supposed to, but there's nobody checking us. So absolutely come check me.
Yeah, for sure.
Teach me what I'm doing right. Because when my AMH members ask me, or my charter members, my club members ask me, like, hey, what's the rule for this? I can tell them what I see on the FAA website or what, but they don't get, like, so that's, I think, the disconnect. The communication makes the knee-jerk reaction. So regulation is coming. We don't know what it's going to be. We assume they're going to carve out a below 400, below 300, below 200, whatever. These spaces in certain areas, certain parks could maybe be deemed, if the park wants to say, we want a drone zone, like the park that our AMA charter is based out of, they're very drone friendly. They want to be known for having a drone field. If I went to them and said, regulation is proposing this and this and this, we could have people come from all over Texas to fly here because they want to have a place to fly. If we kind of built some infrastructure and made it really fun to fly here, they'd probably be down to do it. They could probably get some grants. I could probably do some research and help find that too. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be what we make it. It's going to be what the people rooted within the hobby are going to let it become. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to change. The consumer side is what I think is going to take the hit.
Absolutely.
So I don't worry. It doesn't keep me up at night. Again, at the end of the day, I'm betting on professionals being able to continue to do professional work, because I just can't imagine they're not pulling drones out the air, man. I mean, again, we just talked about it. They're oversaturated. How are they going to, I mean, maybe they should pull some drones out the air. But at the end of the day, this actually does bring up the other part that is really interesting, which is the dumb drone thing.
Sure.
There's a place and time for dumb drones sometimes. And sometimes these smart drones, even when you're able to fly, you're legally permitted, and you've done all the paperwork, the drone locks you out. This is something we're seeing more and more and more for some reason. I don't know who to blame, or I don't care. But the funny thing is, what we are seeing is we're seeing people take those same drones and start strapping them to FPV drones. So we've seen people take Mavics, strap them to the top of a thick, and then flew it like it was carrying a Blackmagic Pocket. Why not? So that got them out of a lockout situation, and they were legally allowed to fly in. They would have lost the job. The car commercial would have never got shot. So we'll see.
It's welcome, man. I guess that's the message behind it. Is welcomed. We need it. We know it's coming. It's going to help open the industry up to different segments that we haven't seen before, which is a really exciting part. Once all those things get in place, and now we know what's going on, we'll be able to move forward and smooth sailing from there, right? So cool, man. Let's talk a little bit about what you guys have going on and with whom you have going on with. What cool projects do you have in the works right now, or projects that are being done with the drones that you built?
Yeah, lots of cool stuff, man. We have some of the best clients. I mean, we've shipped stuff all around the globe, from Australia to Hong Kong to Malaysia we've shipped some stuff to Sweden, and obviously the United States and Canada. We've got a couple of long-term clients. The guys at Beverly Hills Aerial have used a couple of our drones for lots of different things. Probably the most prominent thing so far that I've seen is the NASCAR Live stuff. So they have a couple of our thicks, and one of them specifically I think is outfitted with some specialized live streaming gear from Fox. And yeah, they fly it kind of at the end of the race, like whenever they do the champion, kind of whoever won, the burnouts and stuff like that. So that's been really cool, just being able to see that. We've had stuff that can't really talk about here or there. I've got guys in Dubai that are chasing skydivers with a Komodo and a thick.
Wow.
Yeah. I haven't seen the video yet, but they say they're going to send it to us. We've got a couple of clients that shoot for Top Gear USA.
Awesome.
Sent a couple of geysers out to some teams there that they've shot with. Guy Fieri's Diners, Dive-Ins, and Drives. We've actually had the guy that does all their drone video. We've sent them a drone before that they're going to be shooting some stuff this season. And then we've got guys like Gab, Raphael out of Flow Motion Aerials out of Canada. Those two guys have teamed up, and they're actually working with a company called Revered. Revered is a very well-known, top of the line. Like, they are one of the biggest players in the cinematic game as far as being on real professional, movie sets, TV shows, stuff like that, and they shoot tons of stuff. They are really investing heavily in FPV, and in doing so, they've hired Gab and Raphael to basically be their full-time pilots. They're also building out fleets, so they have to own every drone. So they're building their own fleets out, and they'll be shooting a lot of stuff on different TV shows and such. And then Gab and Raphael specifically also are going to be shooting, I can't really say too much, but they're going to be shooting something for a very large screen, where they're going to be traveling for a year off and on with a film crew all around the globe. And they'll be using these things, Sicario specifically, we're sending one out for Gab to use, and Thick. And they'll be using them to fly, all over the globe in different situations, whether it be kind of under canopies of trees, and it's going to be wildlife-ish related, stuff like that. I believe it's something to do with natural selection is maybe the title of the show or something, but really cool stuff. I mean, really, anything you want to shoot, we can find a way to shoot it. I guess one of the cooler things that I've been recently asked to do is a wild dog hunt out of Australia.
Interesting.
So we had a call a couple weeks ago, and they had seen a rover that we built that has a drone that takes off and flies from it. And they asked, is it possible to do very similar, but do it with a Sicario? And we quickly got into a discovery call where we realized, like, tell us what you're trying to accomplish first, because what you're asking for, like, it sounds great, but you want to fly for 20 minutes, you want to do this, you want to do that. Like, right. I can't do all of it, but
Sure.
I can do a little bit. So that's where he told me, he said, well, I film wild dog hunts for different channels, mainly the Discovery Channel, but we're in Australia, and basically these things take anywhere from 45 minutes to 2.5 hours. And we need to be able to follow the dogs, and then we want to take off as they get deeper into the woods and fly and find them when they make the kill. Because what they do is these dogs, they travel in a pack, and they push the animals into the tree lines, and then that's where they actually go after them. So they scatter out, and so they want to follow the pack as they close in on them.
For sure.
And so they want an RC vehicle that'll drive through these tall grasses and then allow a drone to take off from it. So I just thought it was really super cool. I mean, we spent probably an hour just like talking. I was like, yeah, we could probably figure that out. I mean, I don't know how today, but yes, we could buy a big off-road vehicle. We could outfit it the right way. And again, connecting drones, making drones fly, we can figure that part out. We've done that before too. So, he's like, great, I'll pitch it to the client, and we'll know by the end of the year, and maybe early next year, we'll have a budget. So I told him what I thought the budget would be, and we'll see. But that's the type of stuff that I think really excites me is, we can build the same thing over and over again, and we're going to, and we're great at it, and it's awesome. But really taking the individualized platforms and then finding those new applications and those, creative ways of using them.
It's very cool, man.
Yeah.
You guys are doing awesome stuff here
Thanks.
at Quad Standard Labs. I appreciate you coming on and speaking with us, man, and I look forward to being able to see and share more with our viewers about the things that you guys are doing here, and just being able to see you guys grow and continue to be successful, man. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely,
Yeah. I
man.
love having you out here, man. And
Thanks.
anytime, doors
Absolutely.
are open.
Very cool, man. Thank you so much, and maybe we can get a tour around
Absolutely.
around your new headquarters, and we'll go from there, man.
Cool.
Awesome.
Sounds
Thank you.
good.